Okay. So just to start, for my own records here, what ethnicity do you identify with?
I am Chinese American. I'm half Chinese and half German, but American.
Oh, how cool. Okay. Awesome. Okay, so in your opinion, do you think that there is a problem today with hate towards Asian Americans?
I definitely think so. It's definitely, I don't think it's comparable to the systemic oppression faced by other groups, but I do think there is a lot of individual personal prejudice that a lot of people have internalized about Asian people, for sure.
Okay. Do you have any ideas of where that might come from, that internalized prejudice?
Yeah, I think, well, historically, I'm sure that there's something to do with Japan's role in World War II, but I wasn't around at the time, so I can't really know for sure. But general othering, I feel like, white supremacy has a role in, everything in society, but specifically this, there's this underlying thread in American society that white is right, and anything else is less than, and Asian is part of that. So, definitely, the white supremacist undertones of the American government, American society.
Mm-hmm.
But specifically for Asians, Asian culture is very different from American culture. One specific example I can think of is, sometimes, I'll be in the library, and Chinese exchange students will be talking very loudly on the phone, and that's normal in Chinese culture. And I notice a lot of people in the library will look at them and, kind of glare, and it doesn't bother me, because I'm used to that, but stuff like that, little things where there's a discrepancy
Mm-hmm.
in the culture that people kind of refuse to acknowledge that it's just a cultural difference rather than being something rude or wrong.
Right.
Those sorts of things.
Okay. Let's see. So being Asian American, how do you cope with issues like this?
Oh, man. For a lot of people, I think there's two extremes. I think for a lot of people, the only option or the better option is to assimilate and to try to Americanize themselves. And I think for me, as a kid, that was definitely what I did. I refused to learn Mandarin when I was a kid, even though my grandparents, really wanted me to learn it. And it was because I was just afraid of, what people would think if I was talking on the phone in Mandarin. And, the other side of it, the other extreme is really almost violently identifying with your Asian culture and, being very proudly Chinese or Japanese or Korean. I know a lot of people who, from my childhood who grew up with an American name. I can't think of one specifically, but later in life, when they became a sentient being, a teenager or adult, they took on their Chinese name
Mm-hmm.
as their prominent name, and I think that's really beautiful and really cool. But it is kind of purposely othering yourself in a proud way. So I think that those are kind of the two ways that people cope with the bigotry they face.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hard being kind of both, being half white and half Asian is weird, because you can't, like I said, you can't really violently be Asian when you're only half Asian, and you can't be white either, so it's I'm in this weird space where I'm me.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Can you maybe share some of your experiences being kind of stuck in that in-between, when not fully identifying with Chinese, but also not fully identifying as white?
Yeah, absolutely. So one thing that is kind of unique to being half and half is being weirdly, I almost said sexualized, but kind of sexualized, but
Yeah.
also glorified by full Chinese people. Like, I'll go to dim sum with my family, and the waitress will be like, "Your skin is so light and beautiful, and you have double eyelids. Like, that's a really desirable thing." And I'm just like, "Thank you."
Right.
So it's this weird kind of like, I fit almost like a beauty standard that Asian people wish they could meet, or full Asian people wish they could meet. But I don't fit an American beauty standard, which is obviously Eurocentric.
Yeah.
White Aryan features. So, for example, like, just to follow that same sort of thread of beauty standards, when I was in 5th grade, there was this kid, Robert, he was in my 5th grade class, and every single day I would walk in, and he would look up at me from his desk, and he would pull his eyes back. And I would just be like, "You're a little shit, Robert." I didn't think that, then, but now I do. But, just like white kids doing that sort of thing, or calling me a chink when I was a kid, or, asking what I had for lunch in, like, a joking way, because it was usually, like, leftovers from the night before, like, soup dumplings or fried rice or something like that. Just little microaggressions and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
Strange.
So have you personally, or anyone close to you, experienced discrimination or been a victim of racism?
Yeah, recently, especially with COVID, my mom was in a pharmacy. She was in, like, a CVS or something, and she was getting her medication, and she was behind this old white lady, and the white lady went up to the pharmacist was serving someone else, and there was the white lady and then my mom. And the person who was being served, like, stepped aside for a second to grab something, and the white lady, like, moved forward very quickly and said to the pharmacist, "Can you please serve me now?" or something like that. "I don't want to stand near these nasty chinks." And my mom was like,
Yeah.
"Beat your ass, Kathy." But not like that. But she's a very confrontational person, so she was gonna say something.
Yeah.
But she didn't, thankfully, because I think that would have ended badly. But just, people being outwardly racist like that, I can't even. Sorry, I don't mean to rant, but
no,
like,
please do.
It's just, it astonishes me when people are so outwardly bigoted. Like, I get that everyone's a little bit racist, or at least white people are, and it just, like, microaggressions I can handle, because it's like, maybe you just aren't educated, maybe you just don't know that word isn't okay,
right.
But something like that, it's like, you're obviously using that to be a hateful person, and that truly baffles me. And, I mean, my mom told me that story. I was here in Oregon when that happened, and she told me that, and I was just like, I hate it here.
Yeah.
And that was, like, so clearly fueled by COVID, Like, she was clearly referring to being within the vicinity of a Chinese person, and people have been very racist towards Chinese people recently because COVID came from China, I suppose.
Yeah. So,
yeah. That's one really outward example, but I'm sure there are plenty of other microaggressions I can think of.
Yeah. So was living in Las Vegas better or worse than living in other cities?
Better. There's a very large Asian population in Vegas, so that's nice. It was not, like, okay, let me compare it to Portland, because that's where I live now. When I leave Portland, like, when I go to the Portland airport, I look around and, like, I'll see 1 or 2 Asian people, and they're usually not Chinese. Like, I can usually see that they're Japanese or Filipino, maybe, but I very rarely see another Chinese person. And then when I land in Vegas, it's, like, everywhere. Like, at least 30% of the population is Asian, and a lot of them are Chinese, so that's, like, it's just, there's just more people like me in Vegas. And Portland is very white in general. I think, like, 85% of the population here is white, so it's not even like there's not Asian people here, there's just no people of color here.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it was easier in Vegas because there were just more Asian people. However, in Vegas, it's a little bit more conservative leaning. Portland is a very liberal city, so there's a lot of white liberalism here, of like people not really being fully educated on Asian issues before speaking on them, so they'll speak on issues that aren't really theirs to speak on.
Yeah.
While in Vegas, you'll run into a lot more like purposefully hateful racist people.
Right.
So there are different issues. There's different things that you run into in different cities, yeah.
Okay. In your opinion, is there a solution to this issue? Is there something that we can do to change this?
As individuals, it's hard to say that there is anything that any one individual person can do to fix a problem. I talk about this a lot with my boyfriend Max. Not specifically this issue, but like climate change. Like a metal straw is not going to fix the problem. But for Asian hate, I feel like a lot of it comes from just not knowing, like a lot of Asian or microaggressions against Asian people come from a place of not really understanding like the history behind the word chink. Obviously chink is very clearly a slur now, but like maybe 10, 15 years ago it was not that big of a deal to use it. And I don't know, just kind of, I hate to say getting educated, because how the hell do you educate yourself when there's no resources available to you? But, that's okay. There's one thing. Making resources more available. Like, just doing stuff like this, letting Asian people speak on what they feel, what they think, and what they have experienced and stuff like that. And then also being open to listening is really important, obviously, because I can talk all day about how it kind of sucks to be Chinese American, but if no one's listening, then nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Yeah, so it's hard to create a roadmap or like a plan for making people more sensitive, but yeah, just attempting to be more open-minded and actively looking for stuff like this, like actively looking for people to listen to educate yourself is really important, because you're not going to run into Asian media or like educational stuff unless you're looking for it. It doesn't just happen upon your Twitter timeline or anything like that. You got to go looking for it. So yeah, a combination of making this kind of stuff more accessible and also just making people realize that it's really important to actually actively look for it. Those are the two things I could probably think of.
Okay. Is there anything else that you would like to add?
Well, I talked about it a little bit already, but there's a very distinct difference between the bigotry and the prejudice that Chinese people feel in America versus the prejudice that Chinese American people face. Like, people who immigrate here, like my grandparents who spoke very little English, faced very different prejudice than what I face. Like I said, like I feel a little bit of tension from both sides, being kind of not Chinese and not American or not white. And my grandparents were fully Chinese, like immersed in that culture, did not attempt to assimilate to American culture. And I remember people would infantilize them. It was weird. People would talk to them like they were kids. And very clearly not kids. They were elderly people, so it was strange. But yeah, I can't really speak on, obviously, the prejudice that fully Chinese people feel, because I'm not fully Chinese. But I do want to emphasize that it's different. Yeah. So, yeah, that's all.
No, awesome. Thank you so much. That's all I have for you today. So,
cool.
Thank you so much. This helped a lot.
Thanks for doing this.
Yeah.
I'm glad I got to talk about it.
Thank you.
All right.
All right. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.